In the depths of the human psyche, like the roots of plants, the light and dark sides of our nature intertwine. As the insightful Carl Jung noted, not everyone strives for the light, many find refuge and even a need in the shadows. This contrast reflects the complexity of each individual's inner world, where good and evil, the conscious and the unconscious, wage a constant battle. No one can say with certainty that they are flawless. Within us lie dormant primal instincts, an insatiable thirst for power, and desires that can drive us to rash actions. At times, cruelty awakens within us, capable of causing pain and suffering to those around us. However, in striving for an idealized image of ourselves, we often turn away from these unsightly aspects, driving them into the shadow of the unconscious. But, as Jung warned, what we deny does not disappear without a trace. It merely goes deeper, accumulating and forming what he called the shadow, a dark, unexplored region of our psyche. And only those who dare to pass through this darkness, to confront their demons face to face, can hope for further personal growth and spiritual transformation. But what gives rise to this shadow? Just as a physical object casts a shadow by blocking the path of light, so too in our psyche there exists a certain object that prevents the light of consciousness from penetrating the dark corners of the unconscious. This object is our persona. The term persona comes from the Latin word for an actor's mask. In Jungian psychology, the persona is a metaphorical mask that we wear when we enter the social world. It is a carefully selected set of character traits designed to make a certain impression on others. We strive to show ourselves in the best light, to hide our shortcomings and weaknesses, in order to meet the expectations of society and gain recognition. The influential Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, Carl Jung, once described the persona as a kind of mask, the main task of which is to create a certain impression on others, while hiding the true essence of the individual. The process of forming this social role begins in childhood, when the individual begins to realize which aspects of their personality elicit positive reactions from family, friends, and society, and which, on the contrary, are rejected. Acceptable traits are integrated into the persona, becoming its visible part, while undesirable qualities are carefully hidden behind this mask, retreating into the shadow. Over time, striving to avoid a sense of hypocrisy, most people begin to identify with their persona, sincerely believing in its authenticity. As a result, they hide undesirable traits not only from others but also from themselves. These repressed aspects of personality accumulate in the unconscious, forming what Jung called the shadow. According to Jung's definition, the shadow represents the lower part of the personality, a collection of psychic elements that, due to their incompatibility with the conscious attitude of the persona, do not find expression in a person's life. These elements merge into a relatively autonomous, splinter personality, in the unconscious, characterized by opposing tendencies. In the depths of the human psyche, in the mysterious labyrinths of the unconscious, the shadow slumbers, a repository of suppressed desires, unrecognized weaknesses, and rejected aspects of personality. However, contrary to popular belief, this shadowy realm is not silent and motionless. Like underground waters, it subtly seeps into our lives, exerting a hidden influence on our thoughts, feelings, and actions. One of the most common ways the shadow manifests is through projection, a psychological mechanism by which we attribute to other people, social groups, or even entire nations the negative qualities that we do not want to acknowledge in ourselves. As Carl Jung astutely observed, we tend to see in others the evil and shortcomings that are actually rooted in our own souls. This leads us to criticize and attack others, not realizing that we are actually fighting our own inner demons. As a result, the world is still full of scapegoats on whom we vent our unrealized fears and complexes. But the shadow is not limited to large-scale projections onto other people. It also finds expression in our daily lives, subtly influencing our mood and behavior. Character traits, instincts, and desires that we suppress do not disappear without a trace. They continue to live in the unconscious, creating a constant tension between our conscious personality and the autonomous splinter personality of the shadow. This internal opposition can manifest as irritability, anxiety, unexplained outbursts of anger, or even depression. In times of increased stress or disagreement, when the vigilance of our consciousness weakens, the shadow aspects of personality come to the surface, often leading to undesirable consequences. As Carl Jung noted, there are people who claim to have no shadow side or internal conflicts, but they do not notice how certain hidden factors, manifesting as inexplicable mood swings, manipulations, stomach problems, pains, unprovoked irritability, and other nervous symptoms, darken their lives. Instead of rejecting the existence of the shadow, it is much wiser to shine the light of awareness on this dark area of our being. The first step towards accepting the shadow is recognizing its reality and understanding that the image we show to the world and our conscious perception of ourselves are not a complete reflection of our personality. After accepting this fact, sincere self-reflection and a critical look at oneself will help to identify those traits that we have carefully hidden from others and ourselves. As the insightful Carl Jung stated in his Memories, Dreams, Reflections, good and evil must manifest in the depths of our soul if we strive for a life free from self-deception and illusions. However, not all the secret places of our shadow are accessible to simple self-analysis, because some aspects of the personality are buried too deep in the unconscious. To bring them to light, there are several strategies. First of all, it is worth paying close attention to those traits in others that cause particularly strong emotional responses. This is a sure sign that a similar trait is dormant in ourselves. Another approach is to try to discern the shadow of a loved one, which is often easier than looking into one's own. After all, although some aspects of the shadow are of a strictly personal nature, much of what is hidden in it is formed under the influence of social and cultural trends, becoming common to members of society. A character trait that we reject was likely rejected by a close friend, brother, or sister. Knowing their shadow can be a key to understanding our own. Carl Jung, an outstanding researcher of the human psyche, once remarked that consciousness is undoubtedly the most individual trait of a person, while his shadow, the area of the subconscious, the repository of repressed instincts and unacceptable desires, is much less unique. Jung argued that people are distinguished from each other more by their virtues than by their negative character traits. One of the significant advantages of deeply knowing one's dark side is the creation of a contrast that allows the positive qualities of the personality to shine brighter. As Jung noted, confronting the shadow reveals both sides of a person's nature, allowing them to realize not only moral shortcomings but also merits. This leads to a fair conclusion: I can't be that bad. A person's encounter with their shadow, in essence, means demonstrating their own light. Confronting the shadow also weakens the destructive influence of shortcomings and weaknesses on a person's life. Awareness of such problems as anger, selfishness, greed, aggression, obsession, or compulsive states makes it possible to control their manifestations. A person can strive to overcome these shortcomings or, at least, minimize the potential damage they can cause. Carl Jung deeply understood that powerful unconscious forces are hidden in the depths of the human psyche, which can be dangerous. However, as this outstanding psychiatrist insightfully noted, the key to neutralizing these forces, or at least to establishing control over them, lies in their awareness. When a patient gains the ability to assimilate and integrate these forces into their personality, they lose their destructive potency. In the shadow, this dark and unexplored area of our psyche, not only fears and complexes are hidden, but also powerful instinctive drives, aggression, the desire for power, and sexuality. These drives, being conscious and sublimated, that is, redirected to serve higher goals, can become a source of enormous energy and motivation. They can expand our capabilities, inspire necessary risks for a fulfilling life, and even stimulate creative potential. As Jung rightly pointed out, it is down below that we can find the fiery source of life. The shadow is not just a repository of animal instincts, shortcomings, and weaknesses. It is also the abode of strengths of our character that we have suppressed under the influence of improper upbringing or in the process of adapting to an imperfect society. Many people, unfortunately, deny their intelligence, creativity, determination, or ability to resist corrupt authorities, thereby depriving themselves of valuable resources for self-realization and a fulfilling life. As the insightful Carl Jung noted, the shadow of the human personality is not just a repository of vicious inclinations, but also a source of good qualities, such as healthy instincts, appropriate reactions to the surrounding world, a realistic perception of reality, and creative impulses. According to Jung, the shadow represents, on one hand, a regrettable weakness, and on the other, a healthy instinctiveness and a necessary condition for the development of higher consciousness. However, to unlock the positive potential hidden within the shadow, simply observing its dark depths is not enough. It is necessary to purposefully integrate elements of the shadow into the structure of one's character and allow them to manifest in everyday life. As Erich Neumann, a prominent follower of Jung, emphasized, acknowledging and accepting the shadow implies something more than just a fleeting glance at one's dark brother, with the subsequent return to a state of suppression, where he languishes, as if a prisoner in confinement. It involves granting the shadow the freedom to participate in one's life, enriching it with new colors and possibilities. The path to psychological health, according to Jung, lies through accepting one's own shadow, those aspects of personality that we usually reject. This implies not only recognition but also the constructive use of dark sides, as well as mitigating their destructive influence. Integrating these realizations into our self forms a complete character, striving for the ideal of completeness. Approaching this wholeness, a person becomes more attractive to others. Instinctively, people distrust those who seem flawless and overly preoccupied with creating an ideal image. Behind a bright mask, a hidden, dangerous shadow is always suspected. A personality that is aware of both its strengths and opportunities, as well as its weaknesses and shortcomings, evokes much greater affection. As Jung wrote, wholeness requires acknowledging one's own duality. A strong person must recognize their vulnerabilities, and an intelligent person must admit the possibility of error. Otherwise, impeccability becomes unnatural and suspicious. Is it not a well-known fact that a woman appreciates the manifestation of weakness in a strong man, and sincere foolishness in an intelligent one? She is drawn not to an ideal image, but to a living, complete person in all their fullness. In an era of change and upheaval, when the world is torn by contradictions and conflicts, the ability of a person to look deep within themselves and accept the challenge of confronting their own shadow takes on particular significance. It is those who dare to embark on this difficult path of self-knowledge who will be able to contribute to the healing of a divided world, according to Carl Jung. By confronting the shadow side of their personality, a person is freed from projections and ceases the senseless search for the guilty among political opponents, representatives of other races, religions, ethnic groups, or genders. Jung notes that a person who has abolished all these projections realizes the full depth and complexity of their shadow, taking upon themselves the burden of new problems and conflicts. They become a serious problem for themselves because they can no longer easily blame others for their troubles and failures. Unfortunately, many people tend to see shortcomings and problems in society and those around them, while ignoring the much more serious problem rooted in their own inner world. They do not realize that their personality is split, and until they come face to face with their shadow side, they will only exacerbate the hostility and disunity reigning in the modern world. In the works of Carl Jung, a profound thought is raised about the interconnection between personal transformation and the improvement of the world. A person who dares to look into the face of their own shadow realizes that the roots of world problems go into their inner world. Working with the personal shadow becomes an act of real contribution to the common good. According to Jung, by taking on the task of overcoming one's own shortcomings, an individual takes responsibility for a tiny but tangible part of global problems that seem insoluble. This is like a drop of water, joining others, forming an ocean. In conclusion, Jung raises the question of the possibility of objective perception of the world by a person who is not aware of their own shortcomings and the darkness that they unwittingly project onto everything they do. This is a call for self-analysis and honesty with oneself, as a necessary condition for a positive influence on the surrounding world.